Hi, welcome back to Fireside Chats, a series where we talk to SoPro's co-founders Rob and Ryan about different subjects in demand generation. Today we're talking about buyer intent, and Rob, I'm interested to hear how you first spotted buyer intent and how we're using it today.
So, buyer intent, or really, tracking people and their interactions, has been around in B2C for years, and it's been powered by some fairly, privacy shady technologies. Mm-hmm. Third-party cookies is one I think everyone's heard of, and really for probably the last 10 years, every e-commerce site has been using that kind of approach. But it never really kind of made its way through to B2B until fairly recently. And with the removal of third-party cookies and actually a much more of a privacy focus, then a lot of this technology has all of a sudden become way more relevant in the B2B landscape. Because it's not about tracking people, it's about tracking companies. Mm-hmm. Fundamentally, every single B2B sales approach, whether you call it ABM or account-based marketing or not, is account-based marketing. You sell to a company, you're not selling to a person, and often you're selling to a committee at a company, not an individual. And so therefore it makes much more sense to track the intent or what drives a particular company. And so some of the same technologies exist, being able to recognise when a company visits your website, and the fact that that's a company you've previously spoken to or spoke to this time last year. Being able to look at a company and their different events. There's all sorts of signals that you can really use to determine what stage a company's at and what their overall intent is. And then being able to collate that in a way that's accessible to marketeers and to sales teams is another big shift recently, with sort of CRM supporting that and big databases. So we can look through these intent signals, filter out the 90% of them that are just noise, and really focus on the 5 or 10% that will move the buyer journey forward.
So I think on one hand as well, you've got this situation that's coming about with sort of tech as it is now, where I think what you're talking about there is combining prospect level intent to form a really rich company view. But you've also got, there's definitely an aspect of this where actually increasingly a lot of the intent that you're able to track is coming in at company level only. So if you take one of the things we're doing at the moment is de-anonymizing web traffic on arrival on the website, and obviously that runs through IP address and it actually operates at company level. So you end up with a whole swathe of your intent data being at company level only, which isn't really compatible with if you're only really looking at a prospect level. So and actually you can get some pretty high intent signals. So if you've got company level page visits, scrolling your pricing, for example, you want to act on that today. There's probably a call you need to be making. So there's definitely two halves to it, and I think that for me is a big part of why it's so important at the moment.
So what are some other types of buyer intent, and how can other companies use this data?
I mean, there's loads, mm-hmm. And one of the key things about intent is having a framework with which you can layer many different types of intent, because step one is finding out which ones are relevant to you. There's some specific examples. If a company is hiring in a particular role, let's say sales, they're investing in that area. Mm-hmm. Hiring a senior marketing leader, then again, they're investing in marketing and all of the necessary areas around that as well. They might be investing in paid search, might be into new marketing technology or marketing platforms, might be into similar roles, looking for lead gen. All of these things are really key signals. Companies that have raised funding are always under a lot of pressure to grow and really to spend that capital on anything that's going to help them grow. Then there's technographic signals and intent. So quite often when a company installs a particular technology on their website, let's say they've just brought in a new CRM, well again you can infer that actually they brought in that CRM for a reason, they're levelling up sales and marketing, and there's further investment needed. If your technology happens to be adjacent to that, you can detect that. And then there's some of the, I call it sort of the meta signals around the timing. Mm-hmm. If you notice a competitor technology was installed on someone's website 11 months ago, chances are a 12-month contract is about coming up to end. Great time to pounce. And then on top of these are the actual first-party intent, which is looking at the activity that happens on your own website or your own web properties. And that could be page visits, it could be particular page visits, it could be people who haven't visited for a long time, but really anything that indicates the level of interest in your product or services increasing.
I think, I'd go further. Certainly on that category, pretty much any type of positive response to any of your channels as well. So they might be clicking on your social ads, following your page on LinkedIn, connecting with you personally. You might have dialogue in play through one or multiple social platforms. Any kind of positive response across email, you name it. If your direct mail has got 2D barcodes that lead to an offer that they've checked out, and obviously that whole suite of kind of web visits, and then you even within your web visits you categorise those at different levels, and viewing pricing and get in touch pages are probably more interesting than your careers traffic, but that all generally most of that's at person level and quite easy to track, and those things often they can be more actionable. Just from a timing perspective, you can pick them up, and sometimes it makes sense to get something straight out. Let's say you've got somebody that has not been engaged yet, but they've been tracked on your website looking at a pricing page. You've got a real-time alert on that, and you can automate somebody getting in touch within seconds or minutes of that. You've got a very good chance of that sort of striking while the iron's hot. Makes a huge difference to conversion rates.
It's a good point, because the tracking of social sites, it can also lead to some slightly less obvious actions. And you mentioned social ads and people clicking on them, but actually we find most of our ads on LinkedIn are video ads. There isn't really a click, not many people click, more people just view. But we can track the companies that have viewed, and we see around about a 40% uplift in conversion from companies that have viewed our LinkedIn ads to companies that haven't. So it's a really strong intent signal, and really our only action there, it's not necessarily something we're following up directly with an email, it's to put more marketing investment into LinkedIn ads. But without tracking that intent signal, it would look like a channel that didn't work. It's not directly generating leads, it's just having a really positive impact on the intent of companies and on them ultimately converting.
But let me throw one more thing as well. I think one of the things it changes in your that holistic GTM strategy, where we know we're talking about multiple channels now, and running those in coordination, sequences with multiple channels within them. Intent is your differentiator for which of those channels to use where, and for one of the reasons, it's quite logical. Some channels are more expensive than others. What does it cost you to put calls in, for example, to individual prospects? What does it cost you to get direct mail out to individual prospects? And let's say you might have a campaign that be contacting 5,000 prospects per month. The idea of spending £1 or £2 per prospect for direct mail, in addition to everything else, that can very easily double or triple your marketing spend for that campaign.
Cost plays a part in other ways as well, and a really important one where if you set up the world's best outreach campaign, it could be multi-channel, fully optimised, there's still only a limited amount of your target market that are ready to buy at any one time. It's sort of 3 to 5%, and not everyone wants to buy everything at any one time. And if you're only assessing your cost over that 3 to 5%, it's always going to be far, far, far more expensive per lead than if you look at and we see 20 to 30% of people who are potentially interested within the next 12 months, and who you track them by looking at their intent and knowing that they're in the market and picking up at the right time, which means over a protracted period, you're generating far more leads at a far lower cost per lead.
So what would you say to someone that thinks that capturing buyer intent and using it is stalkerish?
So that completely depends on what you're doing and how you're doing it. So if you take, let's take a web chat plugin that's de-anonymising site visitors at using IP at company level, and it's able to say, hey, I can see you're from Cisco, be great to chat, I'm here right now. That's not stalkerish at all, right? You've got person level tracking, which relatively easily enables you to go a step further in scenarios like that, and that's through your web chat, and also on-page content now has pretty quick and easy to personalise to recipients, again, at company level or at person level. And if you're loading a web page and that page is totally personalised to you, it's got your name all over it, pictures of your logo, photos from your last holiday to Spain, and it's going way beyond the line of kind of what would be acceptable, because all of that is possible and it's relatively technically easy to do. You got to use some common sense, because that's going to put people off. So where we make person level personalisation work is get the odd drop in of a name, and when the web chat pops up, we'll throw the name. Hi, is that Sophie? You might have picked up an email from Roger. It'd be great to talk. That's about as far as we go. You don't want to cross the line into being
stalkerish territory.
It can be done,
and it is being done. And I think it seemed if it seems stalkerish, it's being done badly. So much this, even if you are looking at an individual person's journey, it's only as part of how they operate within a company, and working these things at a company level is so important. And I mean, there's companies that only operate in the US, because in Europe and the UK under GDPR, you literally cannot track people without permission, and it does have to be explicit. Whereas in the US, particularly, there are far more lax laws. It's increasingly strict in some states, but there are companies who will track individuals and do it through ways that don't require permission, and in fact through ways it's really hard to revoke permission. It's not using cookies, it's using device fingerprinting, and I think they do come across as a bit stalkerish. I think there's a limited lifespan in these companies, partly from a legislation point of view and partly because it's just not a great way of doing it. So, and there are scenarios where you can see that makes sense in like abandoned shopping carts in the B2C world. Following up with an individual is has its merits, but really in a B2B, much more complex buying scenario, it muddies the waters. It's just not the right way.
Great. And research is showing that a buyer's journey is becoming more complex, there's more stakeholders involved, and deals are taking longer to close than ever. So what can companies do to combat this?
4.3 people in the average decision unit is the latest stats on our side, which is something like I don't know what the percentage increase is, but a significant increase. And year on year, it's the trend. More and more people are involved. And what it means is decisions are taking longer. You've got to satisfy a legal team, a compliance team, a financial perspective, might be operational stakeholders. There's a really broad spread now, and it changes the way you've got to play that late stage of the sale. And it's not, so it used to be a pitch, propose, close, fairly straightforward sales journey for a lot of businesses, and actually what that's morphing into is pitch, propose, figure out who the decision influencers are in the business that you're talking to, and actually in some cases proactively get in touch with them and eke out what their reservations might be proactively. Get the right documentations into them to kind of satisfy the potential risks in mind, and that it's a much more hands-on late stage of the sales funnel. Takes longer, is harder.
It's exactly that oversight. It's not 2021 anymore. Where the market was flooded with easy cash. Companies were spending, they were going after growth at all costs, and therefore buying lots of solutions, and some of them working, some of them not, was the norm. It's now a world where everyone's far more accountable for what they spend, and every pound has to work harder, or every dollar has to work harder, and so therefore there is this buying committee, and like Ryan said, the key thing is about controlling that conversation.
Right.
Because if you just have, let's say you're selling SoPro, and we're talking to someone in sales. They love the idea, they're super excited about it, and that's great. But they've then got to talk to a finance stakeholder, they've got to talk to legal, they've got to talk to technical. And if we just rely on them to have those conversations, they don't have the expertise, they don't have the knowledge to have those conversations. And so it's really, really key that we tailor our proposals to each of those stakeholders. We provide a microsite so those stakeholders can come in and have their questions answered directly by us, not by someone middlemaning it.
Great. Thank you both. Really appreciate your input there and your expertise, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks, Sophie.
Thanks, Sophie.